So this is actually our last class for genetics. It's a really short class, and it's like, it's a bonus class of genetics because it's such a long unit. This likely won't be on your test, whether you're studying at a day school or you're doing it, you're taking a course here at the academy. It doesn't, it usually, it doesn't show up on the test. However, I'm not making the test this year, so I do not know. But most of the time, they don't weight this that heavily because it's really theoretical. I mean, biology is a pretty new science, and we're not really sure about a lot of stuff. So let's get started. So when we talk about breeding strategies, we have to understand that breeding strategies isn't this super highly stuff that only people with advanced technology can do. That is not how things work. From maybe centuries ago, millennia ago, we've been breeding and plant animals for different type of stuff. Selective breeding is one of the things that we use for plants. We're basically trying to refine and strengthen a certain trait. For example, if I had an apple tree, and I found out that out of every single apple tree in my entire garden, one apple tree would grow such big apples. I would want that specific apple tree because I want more of it, because I want more profit. The bigger apple means I can sell it for better price. And if it tastes better, I can actually, earn more money. So that is how we actually have a bunch of different breed of apple. The best breed of apple right now, it's one of those, it's I believe it's Fuji apple or Honeycrisp, but we actually specifically breeded those, and it took us like centuries and decades to actually breed one. So just to let you know, breeding's reproductive strategies isn't something like we're cloning. It's just very simple. We're trying to get a specific trait, we're trying to focus on it, and we will always reproduce to get it. However, remember that this entire unit is about genetics, and obviously reproduction between close relatives, otherwise known as inbreeding, it's usually not a good thing. So, in humans, um, well, when we inbreed, we are more likely to have offsprings that has certain diseases, and then that is the case in many communities that did inbreed. So in plants, that is the case too. For bananas, there was this banana virus, if I remember correctly, and because we specifically breeded those bananas so it tastes better, those bananas got entirely wiped out by the virus. So we're not eating the best banana right now. Years ago that was on one of the Kumon reading booklets, which I remember. It was really interesting, but so it's actually kind of showing us a downside of it. Now, animals, we're gonna talk a little bit more about unethical stuff. We do artificial insemination. So instead of they doing the process themselves of going through sexual interactions and producing sexual intercourse, we're actually inserting this sperm directly into the female, and then we try to create an offspring. Even because most of the time we do this so we can get two different species to mate, or we're trying to get a specific trait because close relatives, they don't really mate. It's something written in the genetics code that you're not gonna like your own sister or your cousin. Something like it's very similar to that idea. And then we have to actually artificially do that, which isn't very ethical in our standards. And then embryo transfer is basically we're implanting embryos into surrogate mothers. This boosts genetic quality without naturally mating. So let's think about bulls, these prize winning bulls. We specifically breed them so that they're much more better and we can boost their genetic quality. These methods are basically evolution on fast forward because we're fast forwarding it. However, However, this comes at a great cost, and many of the times we pay that cost. And then we talk about humans. So we don't do much on humans. That is not good. But let's talk about some breathing strategies. So modern tech, we take this step even further. So for women that don't, they are not really likely to get pregnant, we do hormone therapies. So basically, we'll stimulate egg production for procedures, and then eventually, we're gonna produce more eggs. So that actually increases the chance of a female getting pregnant because many times, if I have one egg and I have many sperms, they're all gonna compete. But unfortunately, there's only one egg. The chance of getting pregnant is it's pretty low. But if we would increase the amount of eggs, it's a much better chance now. Now, in vitro fertilization is the egg and sperm actually come outside the body. So, for example, we could take an egg from a female and then a sperm from a male. Then we try to, make the entire magic happen, and then we implant that embryo back in there and stuff like that. It really isn't the most ethical thing you can do, but it happens because sometimes male and female they do not get pregnant because of genetics, and unfortunately, that is something we're troubling to understand. Finally, we have surrogates, and there's people that's actually paid to do this. So basically, you are basically carrying someone else's child. Very unfortunate. And so, to actually prevent these specifically developed children, we have to make sure that they're genetically okay. So we can actually be able to run genetic tests on embryos before they even get implanted, which is very, very cool considering the fact that, we don't know how to do it. So basically, we can screen for diseases or select, the desired tissue types. This is very realistic. And then we're gonna talk about something called cloning. So people have different idea of cloning, and I think both ideas is valid, but it's more of a philosophy question. So if I clone myself, does that clone is that clone myself, or is that clone just someone else? Because am I having am I seeing or understanding all the ideas and thoughts of that clone? No. That's a completely different individual. They might look like me, feel like me, talk like me, walk like me, act like me, but they're just not me. So we have to talk about something like bacteria cloning. It's just simple. We just clone. Like they're different individuals, but they just clone. It's a complete the same. However, eukaryotic cloning is it's different. So we have therapeutic cloning. This creates stem cells to repair damaged tissues. So at the end of the day, we're not cloning. I just made it sound more cool. So and then we have reproductive cloning, which is basically we're trying to create a new species, I guess. So we're not allowed to do this. This is because we usually try to heal without creating a new life. And many times you see this in sci-fi movies. Somebody will create a clone of themselves, and then they will eventually take out all their clone's organs and substitute them into himself, and be like, "Oh look, it helps me get a longer life." At the end of the day, there's always perspective problems with respect to these. And then we talk about stem cells. So stem cells are like our body's very great repair kit. It basically repairs anything. It can become everything, anything, and it's very good. So we have embryonic stem cells. It's from embryos. They can become any cell type. Adult stem cells, in tissue or bone marrow, they're limited, but they're still very versatile. Induced pluripotent stem cells (iPSCs) are reprogrammed adult stem cells that act like embryonic stem cells, and yet there's no embryos needed. So why do we do this exactly? Well, obviously, they can repair cells damaged by age, disease, trauma, blah blah blah. So this is basically something that we can already do. It sounds very surprising because most of the times we don't understand this. It's such a complex theory and it's such a complex idea that many people stopped caring about it. And again, there's a lot of new biotech coming out, so we don't really know what's going on yet. And then we have to talk about something, transgenic organisms. So as I said at the start, we have GMOs, genetically modified organisms. So this is where we genetically engineer stuff so they can do cool things for us. So we alternate these DNA for specific benefits. For example, we have golden rice, take up iron and create vitamin A, safflower modified to create affordable insulin, and DNA that helps confer abilities are organisms that do not usually have. Basically, ability to develop vitamins and minerals, withstand drought, withstand parasites, withstand temperature. These things are really, really cool. While controversial, these innovations really tackle real world crisis. For example, let's talk about the safflower. If insulin was, before we discovered safflower, which I can't remember, but when did we modify safflower? Let's search that up. I believe it was in 2018, which is, I was correct. Then the insulin price before 2018, it was usually very high. It was a good amount. But then later, after we were able to make this, we were able to get cheaper Ozempics, cheaper insulin, and overall, you know, sometimes modifying stuff might not be a bad thing. Still be a tool for sustainability and human health. However, when we talk about sustainability and human as organisms instead of like the most dominant species on Earth, this leads to a environmental science problem. What gives humans or us the superior rights to take away other lives and modify their life and change it however we want? And many people, many of these plant life theorists, they believe that we shouldn't be doing this, and some people are like humanly superior. But at the end of the day, I chose to actually do this lesson today because I just want everybody to understand that biotech is something that's advancing very fast, and we're able to create some stuff we have never ever imagined before. Maybe one day we'll even think about, if I create a clone, is it really me or is it someone just like me? So I just wanted to have this thought planted in you, and hopefully one day you'll be someone to do and create, innovate these biotechs.